Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It's my pleasure that we're welcoming today Dr. Omar Ramahi as our guest speaker to Global Islam Current Debates, Nebraska Talk Series. Omar Ramahi spent his childhood years between Palestine, Saudi Arabia, the USA, and Jordan. He received his PhD degree in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Illinois, USA in 1990. He is currently a professor with the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Waterloo, Canada. He has authored and co-authored over 400 journal and conference technical papers on different scientific topics. Dr. Ramahi has broad interest in society, religion, and politics. During his university education, he was heavily active in students' organization and founded several student organizations related to politics and religion. He presented numerous talks at US university campuses and churches related to the politics of the Middle East and Islam. He published articles in local and international media on subjects related to the Middle East and Islam. He is the author of Muslims' Greatest Challenge, Choosing Between Tradition and Islam, an awesome book that we're reading today. Today, we're meeting with Dr. Omar Ramahi to go over an argument from chapter 4 in Muslims' Greatest Challenge, Predestination, Destiny, and God's Knowledge. Dr. Ramahi, the Syrian proverb says, "Kullu ismi wa nasib." Everything is sorted out, everything is divided. Yet you disagree. On page 76, you say, predestination is one of the most confusing concepts in Muslim history, with far-reaching consequences. The concept is shrouded in mystery in all Abrahamic faith. For Muslims, however, the roots of the mystery can be traced back to specific verses in the Mus'haf, especially those involving the Arab worlds, Kataba, Qada, and Qadar, and Kitab, probably. The roots of the predominant theories of predestination can also be traced to certain hadith. The claim that all things were planned in advance, with some narratives alleging that all that relate to a human were planned 50,000 years before his birth, while others claiming that all deeds and future earnings were prescribed by angels when the fetus is developing inside the mother's womb. All such hadith are accepted as part of the most common understanding of predestination, yet despite being deeply contradictory to the Mus'haf. Dr. Omar Ramahi, to you on a very deep and complicated topic, the topic of predestination, destiny, or what is called القضاء والقدر in Arabic. To you, Dr. Omar.
Dr. Hassan, thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation. Much appreciated, much humbled, much honored. Just in case some of you might wonder, with a background in electrical engineering, why am I writing a book or talking about Islam? The answer is in my book. I dedicated a full chapter to answer that very question. Now, an exercise, if anyone is interested in what the clergy, I'm sorry, I don't know how to translate clergy, what it really is, because clergy has a certain connotation in Arabic. Rijal ad-din. Rijal ad-din is not the right word to translate it. Rijal ad-din, clergy is not the right word for Rijal ad-din, the people of religion, and we can get to that later on. But I suggest if anyone is interested in this topic, and I'm sure you are, is to go and check out the YouTube and check out important clergy, scholars of Islam, and what have they said about this subject. Very, very simple exercise. Just put predestination Islam on the YouTube search button and you will get approximately 20 to 30 top scholars who are talking about predestination. And this is my challenge to you. This is my homework, if I may cross my mandate here, Dr. Abla, because this is a part of the academic exercise, is to go to those and just try to find out if any of them make sense. Simple. Okay, don't say, oh, but I'm not a theologian in Islam. Please don't. You know, even for the Muslims amongst you, just, you know, be humble. Think that you want to understand what these people are saying without any preconditions, predispositions, anything. Just go there and try to figure it out. I did this exercise. I'm not telling you that I didn't, and it didn't make any sense to me. Some of the explanation, I'm not trying to belittle people, please don't get that impression. I'm not trying to say I'm superior, they're inferior. No. I'm trying to say that this is a concept that had been shrouded in mystery, that had been shrouded in confusion. And as an academic, if I don't understand something, I cannot explain it to you. And if I cannot explain something to you, vice versa, it means I don't understand it. Simple. If I cannot explain something to someone, at least one, then I don't think I do have a good understanding of the subject. So predestination is there are two important things that we want to parse from the very beginning. And that helps us prevent the fallacy that many people try to understand the subject because they don't parse these two completely separate things, completely. What are these two things? God's ilm, not God's knowledge, God's ilm. Ilm is a word that is typically translated as science. Okay, we don't want to parse the meaning of science, but let's talk about a common understanding. Ilm, alim, alim, all these derivatives in the Mus'haf are connected to understanding, not to knowledge. There's a difference between knowledge and understanding. And I think if we frame this question as such, if we frame the discussion as such, I think nobody would have any problem. Understanding is different from knowledge. Okay, I don't think I need to go further into that. I think that's easy, right? That's like an axiomatic statement. So where does that take us? Take us to the Quran, the divine revelation, the revelation that Muslims believe that it's a godly revelation. It came from a higher power, Allah, the God of Muslims. Is that this the ilm is associated with Allah, but not ma'rifah, not knowledge. So whether to jump into the fray, as they say, or so to speak, there's no such thing as God's knowledge in the divine revelation. There's God's ilm. God, you can translate it, God's ilm, as God's science or God's understanding. Okay, or come up with anything you like, but don't tell me that it's knowledge. The ma'rifah. Arifa, he knew. Alima, he understood. There's a difference. That's the closest that I can come to translating alima. He understood. So if I tell you, just to take just a few seconds, because this is important to cover the first part, is that if I tell you put H and O, you get water, and you're not a chemist, you know that H plus O, or few of H, H2O, two of H's with one O will give me water. You know. If you're not a chemist, you don't understand chemistry, you just know. There's a difference between you know and understand. Okay, so Allah's understanding of things, the past or the future, is different from Allah's knowledge. Okay, that subject is completely different from predestination. And the problem is that people mix the two together. Immediately they jump, they say, but wait a minute, but Allah knows, God knows the future, so everything is predestined. I don't see any connection. I don't. There's no connection. Separate the two, and then the landscape becomes easier to navigate, much easier. Having said that, okay, we come to predestination. Predestination is a concept that is completely alien to Islam. Completely alien to Islam. The Syrian proverb, I can, with all respect, not just to the Syrian culture, but to my culture, Palestinian culture, to the American culture, to the natives culture, to the Nordic culture, there are many proverbs that really are meaningless. I'll give you a joke. There's a proverb in Palestine that you will laugh. I'll make you laugh for sure. Let's see if I can. A woman without a bangle is like a man without a cigarette. Right? So this is a proverb in Palestine, when at a time when machoism and manlyhood and all of that means that you need to have a cigarette, right? So, you know, these we can question, and this falls into what God says in the Revelation, in the Muslim, in the Quran, that beware, be cautious of tradition. Be cautious. There's a lot of cautionary words against tradition. Okay, so having said that, and there are many other things that relate to the Syrian proverb, but predestination, i.e., that things are written for you, that no matter what you do, your date of death is registered somewhere in the iCloud or somewhere, I don't know, in some book. I don't know who has that book, that the amount of rizq in Arabic, or the amount of money, financial rewards, bounty, all of that, that you will get in your life is written. Okay, how many kids you will have, whether you will marry or not, who you will marry, all of it is written. Whether you will be wicked or a good person is written. Is completely absent, not partially, completely absent from the divine revelation. So how did it pop up into the culture of Muslims? There's no such thing, by the way, as Islamic culture. Let's be cautious here. There's Muslims apostrophe culture, but not Islamic culture. I don't know what Islamic culture means. There's no definition for it, actually. So it doesn't exist. It's an ill-posed statement. So how did it creep into that culture? Well, if we look at historical records, and I'm, of course, I don't subscribe to a specific historical record, but there's a plethora, there's a preponderance of historical records that give you a feeling sometimes of what happened during a stage in history. Okay, because for Muslims, the only document that they believe in to be authentic and true is God's revelation. Aside from that, they are skeptic. They have question marks about it. So in the 1st century and the 2nd century of Muslims' history, the culture, this concept of predestination creeped in slowly. Now, we don't know. We cannot pinpoint exactly when and who started it, but definitely the dialogues that took place between major luminaries in Islamic and Muslims history tells us that there was a debate between people who did not believe in predestination, people who believed in predestination as a concept, and people who were struggling to reconcile all of these contradictory, what appeared to be Islamic content, but contradictory. And we don't know whether that debate was addressed properly or solved. We have no idea. But we know that certain people triumphed over others. The people who triumphed were patrons, courtiers, supporters of the empires at that time, especially the Umayyad Empire, which we cannot call it an Islamic empire. It was one empire that evolved after the death of the last caliph, Imam Ali. It evolved, became a very powerful empire. During that empire and the succeeding one, the Abbasid Empire, a body of literature appeared that gave rise strongly and solidified the concept of predestination. With time, it evolved, and we cannot speak about gaps in the history of Muslims. We cannot. We're not gods who know everything. But what happens is that we reach the point today that people have accepted it as an Islamic thing, that we're predestined to be what God has decided for us 50,000 years before I was born, before my mother gave birth to me. So where I die, my age, whether I will live in a good way or bad way, whether I will be wicked or not. Now, this concept is in mathematics, I love the language of mathematics. It's ill-posed. It means that it's a bad concept. Sometimes you ask a question, but the question is bad. Sometimes there's a problem that has no solution. For the students, this is something interesting to know, is that sometimes there's a problem that is ill-posed. It means that it has no solution or multiple solutions. Now, to build a bridge, you cannot base your engineering philosophy on something that may give you multiple solutions, right? I mean, the bridge has to work. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it will bend. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. The universe, nature doesn't work like that. There's precision, there's extreme precision. So this concept doesn't make any sense. Of course, you would say, wait a minute, what's the purpose then of the day of accountability? By the way, in Islam, we don't have a day of judgment. It's wrongly translated as a day of judgment. God will not judge us. No, God will hold us accountable for what we do. There's a huge difference between the two. Okay, so what would be the purpose of the day of accountability? It will be a divine injustice. It will be a comedy. As if God created everything just to watch and enjoy a comedy, a theatrical comedy. Okay, it doesn't make sense. Clearly, it doesn't make sense. So there's no way to get out of this contradiction. You cannot reconcile these two things. You cannot. I challenge anyone to reconcile these two. 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't equal 3. Please come up with a way to reconcile that 1 + 1 = 3. Well, some people created the science to do that. Don't be alarmed. Don't laugh. In the history of Muslims, some Muslims created a science to justify these contradictions. Okay, so it evolved to the point that right now many Muslims believe in the content, speaking the language of today's internet and YouTube and all of that, in an Islamic content that is alien to the Mus'haf, alien completely to Mus'haf, alien in the sense that you cannot reconcile the two. You cannot. Absolutely, you cannot. In other words, how can you reconcile the fact that I was created to be sinful, yet God will hold me accountable for my sins? How do you reconcile the fact that and also you ask the question, why would God commit a Somali woman to misery? And I'm picking on Somalia because it had serious wars and famines and whatnot. Has nothing to do with the superiority of the Somali people or lack of. No, why would God commit the average lifespan to 50 years, 55 of a Somali man or a woman, but the German or Nordic man to 85 years? If you were to believe that God made that choice, why did he do that? You would ask. Well, why did he do that? Is he, picking and choosing? Oh, I want to give this person 85 years old, but this is 40. It doesn't make sense. What kind of religion is that? This religion makes you in conflict, And when a person is in conflict, the worst, what psychological conflict, may God prevent this to happen to anyone. Psychological conflict leads to suicide. Right? You can't live with these contradictions. You cannot reconcile things. Religious conflict, you know what it leads to? Religious suicide, meaning you leave the religion. Right? You leave it. You cannot live with contradictions. If you were to open a physics book and you find two contradictory things, for instance, one, at the beginning of the book, it says that you toss the apple in the air, it falls due to gravity. The other part of the book, it says you toss the apple in the air, it flows, it travels further up. What? So what? It's not that you would leave physics. You know what you would leave? The entire university. Okay, so this issue, okay, has nothing to do with Islam. Now, someone will say, no, it does have to do with Islam. The only foundation for predestination in Muslims' history is through what I call the parallel religion, the religion that was created to compete with Islam. I don't call it a deviation of Islam. Islam cannot be deviated. No. Islam cannot be polluted. There's Islam, okay? People can create something else. And that something else is founded upon a body of literature that is referred to as hadith, the biography of the prophet, and the like, okay? In that body, then you find the roots of predestination. Now, why did it come about in the last 5 minutes? Why did it come about? Who was behind it? Clearly, you see that there could be political, social, and other goals, economic, political, and social. These are the three things that govern how we run our societies. Political goals are the supreme that I can think of that had to do with the evolution of the culture of predestination, because the body of literature that emerged under the disguise of prophetic narratives claims that if there's a calamity, if the king is taking your money, if there's a problem, it's predestined. Zip your mouth, stay at home. Is this laughable? Yes, it is laughable. Is it available in the body of this so-called parallel religion? It is available, okay? So I gave you a snippet. I'm not gonna go over many ahadith, so-called alleged prophetic narratives, but this is just a summary, is that you should succumb to the will of the king. Don't question, don't argue. It's meant to be. God ordained it. There's nothing else you can do. At the social level, if a woman happened to marry a man who is oppressing her, mentally, physically, you name it, the culture in the dominant culture in the Middle East, I can speak of the Middle East and many Muslim countries, is that, be patient. It's God's will. You never know what's good in it for you. Accept the beating. The Muslims joke about the Christians, being slapped on the one cheek, they turn the other cheek, but it's much worse in this parallel culture, right? At least in the Christian tradition, you're being slapped on one, you volunteered the other one. In the Muslim tradition, you're being slapped everywhere. and you're being asked to be patient and succumb to it and say, using the word that Dr. Hasan said, nasib. This is my nasib. This is what Allah has ordained for me. See, this is at the social level, and this is just a snippet. And the third example, at the economic level. At the economic level, don't worry, stay on the couch, relax, because what Allah will bring you no matter what. I mean, they go into extreme to tell you that Even if you jump left and write letters to universities for medical school admissions, if God doesn't want it, it will not happen. You know, I'll share some anecdote with you, just a real one, just less than a minute. When I was starting my academic career, of course, in academic careers in engineering, you have to write proposals, right? And I didn't do a good job in the proposals. I tell you honestly, I mean, this is an honest expression, okay, about my past. You know why? Because in the back of my head, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But yet, an atheist, I don't believe in such thing as atheism, but someone who doesn't give regards to religion ends up winning the proposal. Why? Because he did a good job writing the proposal. He deserves to get the grant. He deserves because he did a good job writing the proposal. Cause, effect, cause, effect. I didn't. I thought, oh, it was meant to be. And this was actually, at the beginning of my career, a serious flaw in my operation based on this deeply rooted concept that what's meant to come my way will come my way. All right, Dr. Hasan, I think it's 10:58. I can stop here. There are many things that I can go on. You know, my favorite joke, we academics can talk on for on and on and on. You have to stop us.
We're enjoying every minute with you, but if you think it's a good time to pose for questions from students and open conversation, we can stop here. Let's do that. Thank you so much for the honor and the pleasure of having you joining us again, Dr. Omar Ramahi, a scientist, a theologian, a mentor, and someone I'm so proud to say a friend, a supporting friend as well. Thank you so much for joining us at Nebraska Global Islam Current Debates. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My